meets today or tomorrow, this week. We have a peace summit, in, of all places, the wonderful Republic of Saudi Arabia, where the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, will be meeting with the Russian, what's his name, Favanov, I forget his name now. I can't remember names, it's terrible. I was just listening to him a few minutes ago, kind of articulating his argument, basically, in the negotiation, his position in the negotiation. Lavrov, thank you, Lavrov. And they're going to go to Saudi Arabia, and they're going to sit down, and they're going to negotiate a peace, not between the United States and Russia, but between Ukraine and Russia. The Ukrainians will not have a seat at the table. The Europeans, who are obviously an interested party here, because Russia is a direct threat to them, will not have a seat at the table. The United States has already agreed that, basically, Defense Secretary said this, that Ukraine will never be a member of NATO. The United States has also agreed that the original borders of Ukraine, it's never going back to that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, right? Why Saudi Arabia? Why does Saudi Arabia? Well, they're sucking up to Saudi Arabia, the United States is. And I think the fact that it's in Saudi Arabia is very symbolic. Saudi Arabia is in play. Traditionally been a strong U.S. ally, but has been flirting in the last few years, particularly under the Biden administration, with outreach to China and a little bit to Russia, and of course, very tentative worried about the fact that the United States doesn't seem to be that committed to defeating Iran, who is their primary threat. Secondary threat, they consider Israel, but the primary threat is Iran. Also, they're concerned about the fact that now Trump has come out and said, we're going to evacuate all the Palestinian people and turn it into Maro Gaza. They don't like that, so they're even more likely to kind of flirt with China and Russia. So both Russia and the United States have an interest. Saudi Arabia, of course, produces huge quantities of oil. Through their leadership of OPEC, they basically help determine the price of oil. One of the main campaign promises Trump made was that prices of oil would go down. He needs Saudi cooperation for that. So there's a lot of reasons why this is going to be in Saudi Arabia. The Vance going over there and meeting with Lavrov is just an initial step. Supposedly, Trump and Putin will then meet in Saudi Arabia soon. No date has been specified yet. Again, sucking up to the Republic of Saudi Arabia. And I'm kidding. It's a kingdom, for those of you who don't know. And all of this, as the United States is representing Ukraine in a peace agreement, where the Ukraine has basically said, they don't represent us. We don't want Trump negotiating for us. Trump doesn't speak for Ukraine. It's madness. And then just imagine the meeting between Marco Rubio, who is a intellectual and certainly in terms of integrity, a dwarf, a nothing and a nobody, sitting opposite and brand new to Secretary of State, sitting opposite Lavrov, who has been around, I think, forever. He knows exactly what he wants. Has no problem. I mean, basically, I saw him giving a speech earlier with translations. I assume the translation is correct. Basically saying, what are we going to negotiate with the United States? The Ukrainians are basically a land of terrorists. And we need to cleanse them from terrorism. Is the United States going to help us cleanse them from terrorism? And until we finish the job of cleansing them from terrorism, then there cannot be any peace. So basically, we need all of Ukraine. We're not going to. So see how this is the Russian tactic. The Russian tactic is to ask at the beginning of the negotiation for everything. We want everything. We want Kiev and Odessa. Maybe we can live without Lviv, but basically we want Lviv is in western Ukraine. We want everything. The American tactic of going into negotiation, this is from the art of the deal, Donald Trump, is you give your opponent 80% of what they want, what they ultimately want, and then you negotiate on the final 20%, and then you declare yourself a victor. You really think that in a negotiation, Rubio has anything over Lavrov? And do you think that Trump has anything over Putin? He should. He represents a country that is 1,000 times stronger economically, militarily, from every respect. Putin should be trembling in his boots as he goes to meet the president of the United States. And yet Putin is confident and convinced that he can manipulate Trump and get whatever he wants out of him. I have no doubt about it. And the same with Lavrov. And you can see in their stance and in their approach to negotiation, yeah, you know, the United States is going to help us secure Ukraine for us. And as I said, my prediction, if this all goes through, is Ukraine as a puppet state of the Russians within 4 years, by the end of the Trump term. Now, JD Vance, at the Munich Defense Conference, not only lectured the Europeans on how bad they were in terms of immigration, but how bad they were in terms of free speech. We'll get to the free speech aspect in a minute, which a lot of it, by the way, true. A lot of it true. Although he used, I've read some articles where he used examples that are just stunningly, just stunningly wrong. So he undermined his own case by using bad examples, even though there are plenty of good examples. You don't have to be, by the way, a Putin mind reader to see the body language of Putin, Trump's first meeting, to see how Trump's body language. You can see how Trump talks about Putin, how much he admires Putin, how Putin is a role model. You know exactly how this negotiation is going to go. Trump is the weakling. Putin is the strongman. I mean, if they both took off their shirts, who would look better? I mean, that's the stand by which I think MAGA evaluates people. There's no question. Putin is the stronger character and the more dominant character and the more confident character and the character who cares more. What does Trump care about Ukraine? Doesn't care about Ukraine at all. I'd argue Trump doesn't care about much. Putin cares. So, no contest. You don't have to be a mind reader to read their speeches, to look at their body language, to see how they interact with one another, and to know a little bit, just a little bit, not much, just a little bit of history. Oh, Trump is the weakest negotiator ever. Trump is a complete weakling. He almost always gives in, and he's never achieved any of his major goals, other than, beating Clinton and Biden. Those are his two achievements. Anyway, Vance was lecturing the Europeans and Ukrainians about all these things, but he also started lecturing them about Ukraine. Basically blaming the Ukrainians for the war. Telling them that it's terrible that this war continues. The Ukrainians, he's telling the Ukrainians, it's terrible that the war continues because Ukrainians are dying, a lot of people are dying, and they need to stop it. Not lecturing the Russians who started this war and who could end it like this tomorrow. No, blaming the victim, blaming the Ukrainians, that it's their fault somehow. I mean, these Ukrainians who are defending their families, their homes, their lives on their land from an aggressor, from an initiator force, from a monster who's trying to take over their country, kill their people. Now, I'm reading articles about how the kidnapped children that he's taken from southern Ukraine, they're training them to be Russian soldiers. They are the problems. The Ukrainians are the problems. He's not lecturing Putin. Indeed, again, showing weakness. Now, here's the thing about the negotiation between Trump and Putin. You don't even have to know anything about Trump or Putin. All you have to do is use your own mind, which I know is so difficult for you Trump, worshippers. Trump's officials have, before the negotiations started, already given up everything. JD Vance goes a week before the negotiations are about to start. He goes to Europe and blames the Ukrainians for the war. Now, how strong of a negotiating position does that put them in when they meet in Saudi Arabia? Putin, on the other hand, has not moved 1 centimeter, never mind an inch, from his desires. 1 centimeter. So, all you have to do is use your own mind, think about how negotiations work in order to figure this out. Now, I know that you guys, no matter what the outcome of negotiation between Putin and Trump is going to be, you will declare it a Trump victory because you won't look at the facts of reality. You won't look at actually what happened. You won't look at actually what the aim was and who the victim is and who the aggressor is. Trump did it, therefore it is good, by definition. So, JD Vance not lecturing Trump, but lecturing the Ukrainians, puts the United States in a very weak negotiating position. Lavrov has to say, look, we all understand that it's Ukraine's fault. Great. He would say to Marco Rubio, that's a fantastic way to start the negotiations. Let's start from there. It's Ukraine's fault. How do we fix it? How do we punish Ukraine for starting this war? And all he has to do is quote JD Vance. And he can say, and we all agree that Ukraine's not going to join NATO, and he can quote Hegseth, our defense secretary. And we all agree that we're not going back to 2014 borders, again, quoting Hegseth. Okay, let's start from there. How much of Ukraine are you giving us? And do you promise to clean house in Kiev and the other part of Ukraine, which you're not giving us? Clean house means install a Russian puppet there. I mean, the U.S.'s behavior towards Ukraine is grotesque. It is disgusting. It is truly grotesque and disgusting. And the world is looking. Europe knows that the United States is no longer a reliable ally. They're in panic mode. Maybe this will actually be good for Europe. They'll gain some balls and gain some independence and go and do their own thing. Maybe that is what will happen. I hope. I don't know, but I hope. China's looking at this and saying, let's see how Trump does with Putin. Maybe if that goes well, we can sit down and figure out how to get Taiwan. We can relocate. How about this? I wonder if Trump will go for this. Chinese promise to relocate the TSMC factory that makes chips to the United States. In exchange, the United States hands Taiwan over to the Chinese. Wow, I think Trump would go for that. I hope the Chinese government is not listening right now. All right. Yeah, I think Europe is in big trouble because Europe is at the front line of this. And I don't know how they're going to get their act together and override Trump. And they're going to have to split their forces between sending them, if they have the guts to do it, to Ukraine and to Greenland. It'll be a two-front war that Europe will face in Greenland and in Ukraine.